What's going on, everybody? This is Sean of Raw Select Music.
And this is the Super Sonido Show. I'm La Molly. This is Blue and Green Radio.
Hello and welcome along to this month's edition of the Music for Modern Living radio show, right here on Blue and Green Radio. You're locked in with me, Nigel Gentry.
Confessions
of a Curly Mind.
Blue in Green
Radio.
You're listening to Steve Williams at uk5.org.
Welcome to the Blue and Green sessions.
Ride the vibe with DJ Ronnie Ron.
Twisted Souls.
You're listening to the Blue and Green podcast, and I hope you enjoy what we are going to say.
blueandgreenradio.com.
Welcome friends, you're tuned in to another episode of the Blue in Green podcast. My name's Imran, thank you very much for your time and your company. Today is certainly an episode you won't want to miss. We're incredibly proud to have secured time with the incredible singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, producer, Miss Julia Biel. She's been on, I'll be in complete honesty, she's been on my list of someone to have featured on these podcasts for such a long time, and kind of pinch myself that this actually happened. So it was just an absolute pleasure. We had a great conversation. I'm really proud of it. I hope very much that she is as well, and I really hope you guys are going to enjoy this, and I'm sure you will. Julia Biel celebrating the launch of her 4th solo album. It's called Black and White Volume 1. Her entire catalogue up to this point is honestly something that you guys will absolutely want to embrace. My introduction was through her 2nd album, Love Letters and Other Missiles. Again, it was really cool to be able to discuss that project as well with her. We discussed past stuff. We discussed the new project, of course. We end her introduction to music in general. So it's a really great conversation. We also had the distinct pleasure of reviewing the album for uk5.org as well. So you're more than welcome to read our 5-star review of said project as well. Blue in Green Radio. Before we jump into the conversation, a quick reminder that Blue in Green Radio is a radio station. These podcasts run in conjunction with our station. You can visit us at www.blueingreenradio.com. We are incredibly fortunate and lucky to be able to host shows from across the world, from London to Japan to the States and Australia. We're so incredibly proud of our content, and we're absolutely sure if you check us out that you'll quite enjoy it too. Again, these podcasts are just a real joy to put together and to spend time primarily with our Blue and Green Radio team from across the world. But again, like today, we get the absolute pleasure of hanging out with artists that we just think the absolute world of. So we're absolutely sure you're going to enjoy this one. Regular listeners of these podcasts will know we play 2 songs. Our guest has the luxury, for lack of a better word, to pick the closing number, but I have the pleasure of picking our opening one, and I'm really happy to play this song in particular. We do discuss this song as well. It's a song from her 2nd album, Love Letters and Other Missiles. It's one of my favourite songs on that album. For the Black and White project, this is basically Julia alone with a piano, kind of reimagining songs from her past catalogue. Primarily, there's a couple of new tracks on the playlist as well. But I was really happy that Little Girl, which is my song choice, appears on this version of the album as well. So I thought, what a great introduction. So I'm going to play the black and white version of Little Girl. I very much hope you enjoy this, and will be inclined to check out the project if you have yet to do so. A quick reminder, if you are UK based, there is a live gig 26th of March at Streatham Space, the Streatham Space project in London. There's also a Germany gig announced for 24th of April in Bremen. So if you are anywhere likely to be around those areas, you will absolutely not want to miss her performances. It'll be the full band as well. It won't be a solo performance at all. So yes, absolutely do what you can to check those out. I've talked a lot. Let's jump straight in. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Julia Biel.
It would be easier all around to hide my feelings. take a longer look at my life. I see a time to try and a time to concede. I've learned nothing yet. Is anybody out there? Anyone at all? I never felt so small. Is anybody out there? Anyone at all? Yeah. No, I won't freak out. Though the tears I'm drowning in are like a drug that's burning off my skin. No, I won't freak out. There's not even you can hear me now. The little girl screams without a sound. Is anybody out there? Anyone at all? I never felt so small. Is anybody out there? Anyone at all?
Hello.
Hi, Imran. It's Julia.
How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Oh, it's so great to finally get the chance to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for inviting me to do this. This is my pleasure to chat to you about stuff.
That's very kind. I mean, you're on the verge of releasing said Black and White album. This is sort of the kind of the eve of release. Like, is this an exciting time? Do you still get nervous? This is your fourth solo album. Is there an air of confidence about the process at this point, or the reception of it? Do you get completely nervous? How do you kind of feel at this point usually?
Well, there's not really any there's no usually, that's the thing. I mean, because every album is a different album for a start, and then every album comes out at a different moment in time and into a different kind of a scene, because the scene's moved on, and so everything is always different. So you always feel like a total beginner, I find.
Oh, wow.
Feel like obviously not musically, because I do feel like I'm evolving and developing, but in terms of putting the album out, you kind of always, you sort of, to a small extent, building on what you've done, but to a large extent, like, kind of just like going, well, how about this, guys? Do you know?
So there's no confidence, I guess, like in terms of, having, I know you said every album's different, but I guess you have to weigh fans' expectations of what you've put out before in terms of what you're currently putting out. And does this veer too far from what people may sort of expect in each occasion?
Well, in terms of fans and stuff, well, that's kind of a different scenario, really. I mean, this album, I was fairly confident that fans-wise people would get into it, because it shows that I've been doing over the past few years that I've kind of got into the habit of doing one or two solo songs at the piano, and we just generally speaking, after gigs, when people would be having a look at the merch table and wondering what to buy, then people would buy something, but they'd always kind of go, "Oh, have you got anything solo at the piano?"
Oh, that's cool.
People would be asking for that. So I was partly the reason for making this album was a response to that, because people have always been asking for it, and I've always been hesitant to do it because I didn't feel really ready to do that. I mean, doing it live was one thing, but actually committing it to recording and making a statement with it was something I hadn't really felt quite ready to do until now. So so I was kind of pleased to be able to do that finally. It feels like a real milestone for me.
That's really interesting. I actually would have thought this would have been your sort of, I suppose in many ways, your most comfortable surroundings in many ways.
Well, my development in music has kind of been a bit topsy-turvy. So whereas a lot of people might start writing at the piano and then branch out to include other musicians, etc., I've kind of done the opposite. I mean, I learnt piano when I was a kid, but I learnt classical piano. And then I stopped playing completely for a few years and then found my way back to it as a writing tool, but wasn't really, wasn't like for a long time on stage, wasn't performing, accompanying myself. I had a whole band that was accompanying me and I didn't self-accompany at all. And so the journey to actually become a self-accompanying musician on stage happened gradually as time went on. In the live context, and then I was developing writing using the piano and stuff as well at the same time, and so eventually I just became really comfortable just playing the piano and just practicing my own songs at the piano. So it kind of developed slowly in reverse. Yeah, it's kind of weird that, because a lot of people go, "Oh, this is like a first album or something," in that kind of way, and you could think of it that way, but I needed to start with the sense of belonging with the whole band and learning from all the musicians that I was with, because I'm self-taught. So it's kind of gone that way. I don't know. It's weird.
It's funny you should say it, because that was going to be something I was going to ask you about, because there are so many sort of aspects, some strings to your bow, so to speak, from writing, singing, piano, guitar, as well as all the other stuff. I mean, I was going to ask what it was your initial introduction to music, but it sounds like it was piano. What initially led you to that?
Well, I was very lucky. I was about 5, and my mum said, "Do you want to have piano lessons?" I didn't even know what a piano was at that point. I sort of said, "I don't know." And it was a clash with brownies on the same night, and my sister was doing brownies, and my mum's like, "Well, I think you might like piano, but also there's brownies, and maybe you'd like brownies. Sarah's going to brownies. Why don't you go to brownies?" And so I was like, "Well, okay, well." As far as I remember thinking I probably should want to socialise, so I probably go to brownies. And I went to brownies for a couple of weeks and thought, this is all a bit of a waste of time. I wasn't into it at all. I mean, so I left after a couple of weeks and then said, actually, maybe I'll try piano. I don't know what that is, but let's give it a whirl. And I didn't really like the teacher, I have to admit. I didn't really get on with the teacher, but I kind of obviously liked the sound. And I did really get into it. And I remember I had a keyboard in my bedroom at that point, and I used to, like, when I got to about 7 or something, I started like messing around with like just making up stuff. I was just like, wow, you can make stuff up. This is amazing. And then, but then at some point, I don't know what happened, but the keyboard disappeared. And then there was a piano, and obviously the piano was like in a more communal area. And then I felt really shy and I couldn't make stuff up anymore. So then I had
Oh wow.
I didn't carry so I didn't get into making stuff up again until I left the family home, because it was just too public, and also no one else in the family was very musical, so they didn't want to hear me trying to make stuff up anyway. They wanted to, if I was going to be heard, I had to be practicing sort of, full on classical pieces that someone else had written. Not sort of like the early fumblings of Julia trying to find her musical voice. So yeah. So piano was definitely the initial point of entry into the sort of world of music, though, having said that. And then I was about sort of 10 or 11 when I started singing along to things at home, and people at home would go, oh, that was good. And I'd kind of do impersonations of little things, like little jingles and stuff, and everyone would fall about laughing. But actually, then I started actually going, well, I'm quite into this actually, not in a kind of comedic way, but in an actual way. And then again, like, because Vibe at home wasn't very musical, people were like, yeah, we don't actually want to hear you practicing, so can you actually go up? So I kind of like, everything happened quite late because I didn't, because those sorts of things, I guess, like if I'd have not had that Vibe at home, then I might have practiced more piano and singing as a thing together at that stage. But because of that, I kind of just did classical piano, and then I left home and then started to piece it all together backwards.
Wow. What kind of, when you were trying to sort of come up with your own stuff with keyboard wise, what kind of things were influencing you, or what were you trying to sort of emulate, or trying to, what was sort of proving an influence?
Yes. Like when I was 7, God, I don't know. I was just literally, I think, excited by the harmony, that I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just find notes that I thought, and I was just making up textures, I think, really, because I didn't know what I was doing at all. I didn't have any understanding of harmony or anything. It was just literally like the excitement of creating a world, like just with this note and then that note, and then doing that in that hand and that in that hand, and just like, wow, And I remember having this thought of like, yeah, I really want to do this, So yeah, I'm doing it.
Wow. Cool. It's funny how things work out. Imagine if you had stuck with Brownies. I'd be talking to you about your Bear Grylls Adventure style show.
Oh yeah, but if you actually knew me, that would be so comedic, because I'm so useless at all that kind of thing. I just sporty. I'm not really a sporty kind of any kind. Really.
Oh well, it's a shame. That's okay though. I think it worked out well otherwise. So.
Yeah, it worked out.
What's the family reaction to things now, or when you sort of said, "Hey, I'm really into this"? Was it like, "Oh, you didn't say anything at home when you were growing up"?
Oh no, I did try and say things at home, but it was all very, I'm the daughter of first generation immigrants who are like, and it's not really the done thing to do what I'm doing. It's like, you've got to study, you've got to do something that's a proper profession and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, it wasn't celebrated as it eventually became apparent that this wasn't going away, and I was just like, actually genuinely going to do this. So no, it's been a tough journey for the olds, but I think they're kind of into it now.
That's great. They must be incredibly proud. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. They're not incredibly proud. No. I don't think they're incredibly proud. I mean, they don't come to any gigs or anything, So, but they've accepted it. Put it that way.
Right. Yeah. When you mentioned sort of being the daughter of first generation immigrants, and that, as I understood, was sort of impacted into the current album, Black and White, in terms of the title and I guess your approach. Can I ask you to expand?
Well, when I was so I started recording these solo recordings and thinking about what was going on for me at the time, and what this was going to be about. And over the years of releasing music, I felt, releasing music into the UK, there's always sort of feeling of like, people don't really know where to put me in the scene. My music's not black enough. My music's not white enough. Maybe I'm not black enough. Maybe I'm not white enough, And I started, this is sort of the whole kind of coming into racial consciousness, I suppose, has come about quite late for me, because I was kind of quite busy just trying to figure out my own internal stuff. I hadn't really seen myself in the context of that in this world that I'm living in, this country that I'm living in, and how that is viewed on a subconscious level or on a conscious level by other people receiving my music, whether that's in the industry or generally. And it's just something that came to me quite late. And the previous album is self-titled. I kind of felt as if I'd reached a moment of like some kind of level of internal understanding. So that's why I called that just a self-titled thing. And then this album, I suppose, is like, in a way, like the natural continuation of that evolution on a personal level of like actually going, all right, so, okay, so what is my identity in terms of like the world? And I sort of struggle to kind of divide myself. I know, like, in British society, I would, because I'm not white, I'm sort of viewed as black. That's that, and for a lot of mixed race people, that's the identity that they adopt, and I understand that. But I am my heritage is extremely mixed, and I struggle to be anything other than myself. So I mean, I've been asked, so how do you identify? And I'm just like, well, I can't really say that. I've got to be both. I'm going to be anything. I'm black and I'm white. If we're going to go into these like binary divisions, then I am both. And also, I think my music. I came to the conclusion that actually my music that I've made, the influences that I've brought together, are actually a reflection of that. For me to be authentically expressing myself involves combining influences that you would put under the umbrella of black and put under the umbrella of white. So, and then I just thought, actually, this whole binary concept is just really just so unhelpful, divisive, and if I'm going to use these words, then the "and" is actually really important. It's about bringing everybody together. It's about saying we all belong together. I belong. I don't feel excluded from any context. I guess that's one of the sort of chameleonic things about being multi-heritage. You sort of like I go to a lot of places in the world and don't feel as if I'm sticking out. So that's quite nice. But yeah, I kind of just want to just say, anybody is connected to everyone else on the level of emotion, and we shouldn't feel as if like people who look like that should only make that kind of music, and people who look like the other should only make that kind of music. It's just like emotion is emotion, and it's all in the music, and it's common to all of humanity. So I'm just going to be all things and just say what I feel and be authentic. And that's what this album's about, really.
That's beautifully put. It's beautifully put. And something, if you don't mind me saying, something I sort of relate to, in as much as my parents are, I'm also first generation from my parents. They weren't born in this country. My father was born in India to Turkish and Iranian parents, and my mother's Greek Cypriot. So they ended up divorcing when I was about 8. And it's a very difficult thing because neither parent really instilled much of their heritage in me. So you kind of go to family functions on either side, and you sort of feel like a bit like a ghost, really, because you're not ingrained into either culture. So that those questions about your place in the world can completely resonate with, completely sort of relate to. And it's a difficult thing to comprehend, isn't it?
It is a difficult thing to comprehend. It's not something that's really talked about a huge deal, because, I mean, eventually when I try to raise it with my own parents, then it's really difficult for them to understand, because obviously they've, and your parents, I'm sure, are the same. They've travelled from far, and they've come to this country, and they want to believe as if they've brought children into the world and into an environment that is going to be good for them, and it is obviously great to be here, to have a connection to here, and to have the opportunities that being of here brings. But at the same time, we, as people who are not white in this country, have to answer these questions for ourselves. Like, how do we actually fit in here, and who are we? Everybody has to answer that for themselves. And like you say, if your parents haven't instilled that culture in you of their culture, so you don't have that connection to their culture, then you have to create your own culture and create your own way of being in the world. And I think certainly for me, music has answered a lot of those questions, and it's about creating a sonic world that I think represents me and that I can belong in. And yeah, I think that there's lots of conversations to be had with people of multi-ethnic backgrounds around those topics.
Yeah, I think that adds a wonderful poignancy to your project, and it gives a sort of knowing that going into it. It sort of just makes everything you listen to very, very all the more moving, all the more touching. It sort of impacts me as a listener, considerably more, knowing that was the thought process you went in to going to creating it. So yeah, it's a wonderful piece as a result. Yeah,
thank you.
And this is your first album with a vinyl release, as I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's really exciting. It's like you just think it's not a big deal, but actually, when it comes, you're just like, wow, it's so nice. Like you feel like, I don't know, you just feel proper. You feel like, oh, I've actually done something now. I don't know. It's amazing. It just feels proper. It was good. It's good. Yeah, it's nice for you.
Why had you never done it before, out of interest?
Well, it's just cost, really, and partly, I mean, even this time it was like, oh, well, it's a little bit of an experiment, and it's just in a way just like because I really want to do that. But I felt that this music might work really nicely on vinyl. I felt also that the intimacy that vinyl brings would work well with this music, I think. Yeah, that was partly it. And then partly just because some people had asked for it, and then I'd never had anything there. And so, yeah, and I was sort of partly led by that. So if anyone, maybe that's just me, but if people say, oh, why haven't you got anything on vinyl? Or why aren't you like that? That does set a thought process going, and you think, oh, yeah, actually, maybe I'll try that, So it's good. People should tell people what they think, because it has consequences that are sometimes positive. So that's good. Shout out to everyone who might be interested in getting hold of the vinyl. Go to Bandcamp or go to the website, and you have to kind of order it postally, really, because otherwise it might be tricky. But yeah, it's a really nice thing to be able to offer people if you can afford to go down that road. And happily, that was my situation at this stage. So I thought, yeah, let's do it.
Excellent. I was hoping to just sort of get a couple of like what the thought process was to some of the tracks that you included. Like, what was it? Just because they were some of the ones you were doing live? Were they ones that you thought would kind of benefit within this kind of solo kind of context? What kind of led you to pick some of the songs that you chose?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of new songs in there, brand new for this album, and I wrote those from the point of view of like, these are going to be done solo. So they were written in that way. So they kind of led the way. Those are broken little pieces and 3 little words, and they led the way in terms of what the mood of the album was going to be. And then, so from there, it was just about choosing songs that I thought would go with that mood, and possibly also that I'd just been in the habit of playing solo and enjoyed the way they sounded. And there were a few others that I recorded, but I just thought, I'm not sure about those in terms of the context of the mood. I'm always writing and conceiving of things from the point of view of mood, I think, really. So, that would all probably have been the driving force about including this over that, or what have you.
I was very happy to see one of my favorites from the Love Letters album, Little Girl, being included on that. That was the original version of that is a stunning tune from the album. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I'm glad from yours, because that was the one I was feeling a little bit a bit less secure about. That one.
Oh wow.
Yeah. In fact, that one is because when you do a vinyl release, you've got slightly less time to play with, and that's the one that didn't make the cut on the vinyl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I've just told everybody now, so there you go. But I'm really glad that you like that one. That's good. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Yes, both versions. Yeah, again, the original album one, and this one is gorgeous as well. So, I was very happy to see that one there. And probably one of the best song titles ever of "You Could Turn a Rainbow Grey," which is such a kick in the stomach. It really is. I love that. It's almost like I don't need to hear the song. It's as direct as any other lyric in there could be. I love that. It's such a good.
Yeah,
it
well,
can be.
sometimes when you just like been like, I just don't know what to say to you anymore. Like, you know, like you range this topic of every angle I've got nothing else to give you here. So yeah, again, that's funny. Yeah, I'm glad you like that.
Yeah, it's you're very good. Your titles actually. I was just thinking about it now. They can be very. I want to say punchy, but there's a very directness, I think, in them, like that one. And I always, going back to the Love Letters album, the actual title of that album, again, it's just a brilliantly titled album, Love Letters and Other Missiles. It's not, again, it's a very punchy thing to say about the things that people say to each other, and that kind of, whether they be lies or just general untruths. I thought that was a very, I'm lacking an appropriate word, but a wonderful title.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I guess like always try to say what you mean in as few words as possible if you can, and at times you get some moments of inspiration, and yeah, so that's cool. I'm glad you like that. I think probably like I wrote a song on that album called Secret Party with a couple of guys called John Beck and Steve Chrysanthou, and they actually co-wrote Put Your Records On with Corinne Bailey Rae.
Oh wow.
And around that time I'd written You Do My Head In, and I played it to John at the time. I played it to John and I said, I don't know what to call it, and he was like, oh, come on, love. He goes with his lead accent, but he was like, you've got to call it You Do My Head In, that's it, you know. And I was like, what? That's a bit blunt, isn't it? And he goes, yeah, but you've got to be blunt. You've just got to say it how it is. And I was just like, okay. And I think that lesson has stuck with me. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, this song is this, boom, you know. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's a very direct way of doing it. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, exactly.
For this album, as with the last two albums, you've hooked up with your longtime friend, I imagine, collaborator in Idris Rahman. He's your co-producer and so involved in so many of your projects. I mean, how would you describe the way you guys work together?
Idris, well, I should say, because it might make more sense to everybody, he's my long-term partner as well.
Right.
So, you know, if anybody understands me and what I'm trying to do and be and express, it's him. You know, he's understood me and watched my evolution and been there every step of the way for the last 20 odd years. So
wow.
It's very natural and beautiful blessing to have him in my life anyway, but then also to have him on my musical journey is amazing, because he's such an extraordinary talent himself, you know, as a sax player, as a producer, as a songwriter in so many ways. And yeah, so I'm very fortunate to have his ear and have his talents getting involved in my projects, you know, and every time it's something slightly different, you know. The level of what I might be needing is different, you know. I might say, you know, I kind of get what happens is, like, you kind of write quite a lot, or you get so far into something, and then you kind of lose all sense of where you are and I'm just lost, you know, because it's difficult to be objective about something that you're so involved in and you can't see the wood for the trees, you know. And so it's really useful to have somebody whose opinion you fully and utterly trust, to be able to bounce things off of, you know. And that's kind of really how this relationship works in a musical sense, is he's just really intuitive about knowing how involved to get. He doesn't ever try to take over. He never tries to stamp his own vibe on things. He's the most supportive person as an individual, and also as a musician and as a producer. So it's just wonderful, to be honest. I'm really blessed.
Excellent. Wonderful. There's an undeniable, obviously, chemistry with just listening to the music that you guys have put out over the last how many years. I mean, it's really exciting. Where did you guys initially meet? Was it through bands and such?
Well, we actually met as students. We were 18 and we met as students, and in the context of a student musical. And I did a lot of dance in those days, and I was involved as a dancer in this musical, and he was involved playing the score on the saxophone. In fact, the score that Zoe Rahman, his sister, had co-written with a guy whose name escapes me now, but I think that John Lipkin actually might have been. Anyway, and so Idris was involved playing that music in the on-stage band, and then I was in the chorus line effectively of this musical, and it was a great time, really fabulous time to be, just carefree and involved in this thing. Musicals are fantastic, or productions of any kind. We just get so involved, and all the cast hang out together and become one big family and all that kind of thing. So I got to know him fairly well on that, and then after that we were in a band together as students. Another friend said they wanted to set up a band, and I was quite pushy in those days, and I said, "I'll sing in your band." Like, So he's like, "Oh, all right then." And then I sang in this band, and Idris was in that band as well, and it was great. Yeah, so we kind of got to know each other in various musical contexts. Back when we were young.
And then you said, "I'll be your girlfriend," and he said, "Okay, sure."
Yeah, that kind of took a little while longer, but yeah, we got there.
Very good. With kind of looking at like black and white, and like something I guess you put out, which is sort of in many ways the exact opposite of it, was the License to Be Cruel EP, which I was hoping to discuss because it was really exciting seeing your music kind of taken into completely different areas and contexts, and with remixes with Wooloo and Sun Lux and Yes King. I mean, do you kind of enjoy seeing your music taken out of sort of what you originally envisaged for it, or is this like difficult to sort of let go of things?
I know, it's fine. I mean, once it exists in the manner in which I had in mind in the first place, that's my interpretation of that song, and done in the way that I'd envisaged. And then after that, if someone gives it a new life and with their own angle, that's brilliant. It's fantastic.
Oh, cool.
Really, I'm just then beholding their artistry, and my song is just a vehicle for their artistry, and that's how I view it. And that's great. I loved it. I loved doing that. I'd love to do more.
Wicked.
It's just a question of, I think for that as well, it's like, well, we talked about the fans and stuff. I think a lot of people were a bit confused by that, to be honest.
Oh, really? Did it get sort of okay? Because I guess it was a departure, wasn't it, from what people would have come to expect at that point?
I guess so, but I mean, and even on an industry basis, people are like, well, what is this? Like, well, it's electronic music. It's like, I don't know, it's like, do you not listen to electronic music? Like, what? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so people are a bit like, well, what is it? This isn't jazz. I'm like, no, correct. It's not really jazz. It's like jazzy electronic music. But apparently that wasn't really a thing, or I found that quite difficult to actually put out. That.
Oh wow, okay. I would have thought the words remix would have given it quite would have put it in the desired box. Wow, okay.
There's never any shortage of surprises in terms of putting music out and how it's received, it's always like some revelations of like people who think that might get into it, and then they're like, oh, and then other things that other people get into, and it's always fascinating, actually. It's kind of like an exercise in sociology and psychology a lot of the time, putting music out. Yeah.
Do you kind of, it's interesting, actually. How do you kind of find that balance of sort of being as an independent artist to have to kind of balance an ever evolving and changing dynamic in terms of streaming culture, download culture, etc.? I mean, do you find those initial challenges, or do you kind of feel that you've got to a point where you can put out what you need to put out in the way that you do, and that people will find it and in that way, or do you find yourself having to adapt to these constant changes?
Yeah, I mean, putting out music is a challenge, you know. I think it's an ever evolving challenge because of the fact that society is evolving and the way people consume music is evolving, and tastes are evolving, and you yourself are evolving. So it's like it's always a constant movable feast, really. I enjoy making the music and expressing myself, and that's really where the core element of it is. Everything else is a kind of is something that has to be got to find a way. Just got to find a way, you know. So, and I always do find a way, and everything is working beautifully. But it's not that easy, that side of things. But if you want to do the one, you have to do the other. So you've got to just embrace it, really.
Well, yes, as you say, I think you have found that balance, and you have done so incredibly well for years, and I think it's amazing to see you continue down that path and continue to gain notoriety and new listeners, etc., etc. Yeah, I think you've done an amazing job in that respect. My penultimate question to you, if I may, in 2018, in a gig I didn't get to go to see because I found out about it fairly recently, but you for the EFG London Jazz Festival in 2018, you did what I can only imagine would have been a stunning tribute to the music of Billie Holiday. And I guess that year would have been her 100th year. I think that would have been the year that there was quite a slew of projects that had come out. It was celebrating what would have been her 100th year. I was just wondering if you were a particular fan of Billie Holiday, and if she her music had a particular impact on you.
Yeah, her music did have a big impact on me, and I am a big fan of Billie Holiday. But I'm just wondering if I did that gig last year or if it was 2000.
Oh, I found it on the website. Said 2018.
2018, really? Wow. Okay, well, it doesn't seem that long ago. Wow, that's time goes so quickly, isn't it? The music of Billie Holiday. I would say that in terms of learning to be comfortable revealing my vulnerabilities and becoming aware of how much beauty there is in doing that and how that can speak to people. That's something that listening to Billie Holiday, you know, has taught me probably more than anything, more than any other artist, and also just the power of the voice to give new meaning to a lyric, you know, just by how you delivered the lyric, you know, and the subtleties involved and the nuances. And so that gave me the inspiration to try to do that in my own way. And yeah, a lot of the harmony in those days and the arrangements are just so gorgeous and so beautifully done. And there's a lot about the era of music that she was involved in that I really love, and the recordings that she left us with. And you know, when I began singing, I sang a lot of jazz standards. So this was, you know, that whole songbook stuff is something that people don't necessarily associate me with, but I have done a lot of that, and I enjoy singing swing. But yeah, people probably, like I say, haven't associated me with that because I have kept that out of my own recordings to date. At some point, maybe I might record an album of standards and do it in that way. But but it's not part of the narratives that I wanted to bring out so far. I wanted to express my own narrative, and get deeper into that and what that involved. But yeah, that particular gig was great, and you know, in various contexts over the years, I've played Billie Holiday in various things because people have likened my voice to hers, which is an enormous compliment. So I'm always happy to sing that songbook, if you like. And I thought that, you know, that would be a nice thing to reveal to people for that particular occasion. So I put together a little trio to do that with. But it was a one-off, and yeah, maybe in the future we'll see.
Wonderful. I imagine it was a magical performance. Yeah, it would have been amazing to have seen. So yeah, wonderful. Yes, thank you so much for your time. I think I mentioned about picking like a closing song for each of our podcasts end with our guest picking a closing song. So may I ask, did you have a moment to select something from the Black and White album or so, or anything at all?
Okay, well, so what I thought was that I would pick a song from my first album, which is
perfect.
The last song, like a little hidden track. And it was probably like the first song really that I could say that I wrote on my own, like properly, that that's certainly the first song that I wrote on my own that I put out. And it's called History, and it has some relevance with the Black and White album now, and it's sort of similar theme in a way, although the songs on the Black and White album don't overtly talk about being of mixed heritage. It's just been a way to say people, I don't know, it's just a way to sort of give an umbrella to a wide palette of emotions. But this particular song, History, which is the final song from my Not Alone album, does talk about, reflects more on being of mixed heritage and what that might mean. Although it's very short, it's not even 1.5 minutes long, but it's just a poem that I woke up with in my head one morning, and I set that to music and harmonized it and produced it up to be a track on that first album. Yeah.
They were young when time was heavy, where they came from, and precious seconds lingered as though they're lost ones. They struggled hard for freedom, wanting only their future generations rewrite their history. Far away from where they started came their children, and all the things they suffered they kept well hidden. They felt as safe as houses in their new prison, but history lives on children's faces, so I can protect them.